Bombay, as it was then known, now known as Mumbai. And I think I grew up in some ways in a house which had a lot of science, full of science. So I should start my journey with my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. He was actually from a very poor South Indian Brahmin family, and he somehow got educated till his graduation in his village, and then decided to move to the city. In those days, Calcutta was a big center, now known as Kolkata. So he moved there. Luckily for him, in those days they used to get married young. His wife came from a little more well-to-do family, and his father-in-law actually financed him because he was an orphan by that time. His father-in-law financed him to some extent, and he moved to Calcutta, where he joined as a clerk in a patent office. But his passion was science. So he was in on one side working to support his family, studying to become a lawyer. So he was doing his LLB, and in the evenings after work, he would go to the Indian Society for Cultivation of Science, which was at that time Sir C.V. Raman was working there, and he was one of his students. So in fact, he was working with Sir C.V. Raman when the discovery was made, which led to the Nobel Prize. So we grew up with this whole person who was, doing law as a profession, but science was his passion. So he was somehow managing all this. Of course, his wife was, that is my grandmother. In those days, girls were not educated, so she was illiterate. But she supported him in this way. She completely took over looking after the family. So I think we must give credit to her that in spite of her not being educated, she did that. So I think science was there, and he was a very forward-looking man, but he had to balance his views with the traditions and society of those days. Anyway, later he moved to Mumbai and Bombay, and slowly rose. In fact, he wrote the first patent law of independent India. So we had really a very big role model in the house. He passed away when I was just 7, so I can't say that he influenced me after that when I was growing up. But of course, he influenced his kids, and so through that, my father. So my father is also a chemist. He did his PhD in chemistry, in X-ray. Actually, X-ray crystallography was his PhD, but he moved to textiles because that's where he got a job. He cotton research lab is where he worked, and he became a director of that lab at quite a young age. So at the age of 8, in fact, we moved to the quarters, which was in the same campus as this laboratory on Edenwala Road in Bombay. So that was again a very thing that we used to have science right there in our building, and every time there was something happening, a science movie being shown, my father would say, why don't you come and watch? So even as kids, we were exposed to a lot of science magazines coming home. My mother was also a graduate in science. She was a graduate in physics. However, in those days, she had to be sent to a co-ed college for her post graduation, so she was denied that opportunity. But we grew up with this atmosphere of science, so I think that was a very big thing. I sometimes my parents used to tell me, why don't you do something else, commerce, for a change, because when I finished school. But I said, no, I don't think I can do anything but science. It's just so much in me. So I think that was a given right from my school days that I would study science. So currently, I am training science teachers to upgrade. I won't say training exactly, helping them to upskill themselves. I've been a school teacher for a long time myself, and it was a struggle in the initial days because in those days there was no Google, there was no way to find out what the rest of the community was doing. So you were pretty much left to yourself and your colleagues, some of whom actually didn't want to help you because they felt that you may take away their opportunities. So I think that this is a very important thing because teachers are very overworked. They have a lot of things on their hands, and they really don't have time to go and find out. what else is available for them, and how they can change the way that they are doing things. So this project that we are doing, the Royal Society of Chemistry with Dr. Yusuf Hamid, who is uh, actually funded the project. I think it's a very good thing because the teachers are now exposed to various different techniques of teaching, the places where they can find resources. So it is really helpful for them. So I don't know if you're aware, but most of the schools in India still go by the chalk and talk and use the textbooks. They don't get the children involved so much in their learning. So we are actually helping them develop different activities, puzzles, games that they can use. And they were under the impression, many teachers that we trained, they tell us we were under the impression that this would eat into our teaching time. So they did not know how to integrate an activity with the actual teaching. So we show them that, okay, if you take any topic, like you can that you are teaching in science, say in chemistry you're teaching them any topic, you can take that topic, create a game, so that the children learn the definitions through the game, or the children learn to connect different concepts through a puzzle. So if you can make a kind of jigsaw puzzle, which we call tasya, they can connect their concepts through this. So it is not a waste of time, but in fact it enhances your teaching and makes the children more involved. I think that, and also this the whole workshop is created in a very interactive manner, where the teachers actually themselves experience these activities, so they get convinced and they start using them. The other thing that is there is a problem is the lab facilities in our schools. So even pretty well the middle class schools, though they have labs, the teachers don't have enough lab time to take the students to the lab. So in many countries outside, because I have lived abroad for some time with when my husband moved out, uh, the teachers have a mini lab, like science teachers have a mini lab in their classrooms. This is something that we can't really have in our system, where we have a large population in our schools. But we are now giving them ideas how they can create a small kit which they can take to the class. Their safety becomes an issue. So, how can you use micro scale chemistry, for example, which are also a more sustainable way of doing chemistry? So, these are some things that we do in the workshops with the teachers. Yes, but as I told you, in those days, there was no way to find out what others were doing. So it was pretty much left to you yourself to innovate and try out things. But I did try some new things, and there's another big hurdle that teachers have is that the school management has to support you. Often the principal doesn't support your new thinking, but at one stage I was very fortunate that the principal said, okay, you know best what's good for your students, as long as it's not going to be expensive and too much of a burden for the students or for the school, you can go ahead. But slowly, at that time when there was no really smart boards in the schools, I kind of convinced them that we needed to have at least an audio visual room and get a projector so that we could show a few videos to the students, how that would help. And I also changed the way of doing projects, because all projects were done on pen and paper. But IT was coming in, so I said, okay, the students need to learn how to use this. So I said, okay, let's do a PowerPoint presentation in groups. So even though everyone didn't have an internet connection, I said, okay, you can make a group, find out your information, and put it together. And I found the students did a wonderful job. They even incorporated music into it and all that. So then I showed it to the principal. I said, this is what we need to do. But the boards, of course, don't change. So in the board exam classes, they had to do a pen and paper thing. But I found that if you just give the students a chance, how much creativity comes out. Meaning, yeah, they put a soundtrack into it, while they were. I mean, I did not expect it. I mean, I was looking more at, pictures and the material and how they put together PowerPoint presentation. So this that I'm talking about is almost like 18 years back. Yeah. So actually, I did not somehow emphasize so much on learning the periodic table, because it's actually a very logical thing that you don't need to remember each element, I would say, in order, but more as a part of a group. So class 10, actually only 20 elements are there. So that's not a very big thing for them. They do manage to remember. But when they come to the 11th and 12th and they have the entire periodic table, it's more important that they understand the trends and how things move, from groups and in periods and groups, because that helps them to think. So I'm not very good at remembering things myself. So when there's logic, it becomes very much easier. So when people say that, some people have told me chemistry is the most difficult because there's no logic. People who like physics and maths. I said no, there's a lot of logic. You just have to see it, and then there's so much logic in chemistry as well. Ah, uh, I would say there are two things. One is actually a few things. One is that my husband moved a lot, and we were even posted in the mines where, because he was working with Tata Steel, and we had to be in the mines. So in that school, in fact, we had a combination of students. Even minors, kids used to come to the same school, and some of their parents, I mean mothers especially, were completely illiterate. So one is, that was, I think, a challenge for me, because I had to teach them in Hindi, in my bilingual, like Hindi, to explain to them, and then again in English. But I think the students appreciated what I did there, and I thought that this was something, I was making much more of a difference to these kids. They could see the potential of what they could do if they were educated. So some of them, one of them has now become an engineer, so I'm very happy about that. And because miner's daughter becoming an engineer is something that one should appreciate. And the other thing is that I was able to adapt to different things. So I did a bit of stint with an ed tech company, and then the teacher development program has been a very wonderful experience. I'm seeing places and situations in our country which I would have never known before, because we go right into the interior, into villages, see how they are functioning. So we have to adapt our program based on the facilities and the resources that the teacher has, because they should be able to actually put into practice. It's no point just telling them do this if they can't do it and they don't have the resources. So we work with the resources that they have. So this adaptability is something that is very important. And the other thing is that during the COVID time, actually, my husband is was associated with an NGO which works with poor farmers, and they were setting up a new factory. They had So the thing is, these are peanut farmers, and there were a lot of middlemen who used to not give them their full price. So the NGO was actually set up as a cooperative for the peanut farmers. But the next step was value addition, because peanuts sell for like 120 rupees a kg, but if you
Hmm.
make peanut butter out of it, it's going to sell at a much much higher price. And the companies, multinational companies, they buy the peanuts, make the peanut butter, and get the profit. So why not train the farmers to do it themselves? So that was the factory, but along with that, they millets, and so we were making this idli powders, dosha powders, and things like that. Now these the factory itself was set up in a rural place, because we wanted the farmers themselves to do it, and people from the farming community. So my husband and I, we took up the challenge of setting up that factory. He was more on the commercial side, but I helped with uh, deciding what should be the different ingredient mix, and then training the people on how to maintain the standards, because they had to learn how to keep a record of the temperature at which they're roasting the different ingredients for the time, and also their hygiene and safety and everything. And I think that was a very good project we took up for a year, and the factory is now running, and they're on their own. So we just give them some advice from time to time, but otherwise we are out from daily management of that factory. So I think that that was another very thing that we are very proud of, that we could achieve something, because I was really not in the industry, But those were times they didn't have anyone. I said I'll put my chemistry to use there. So I think that is something that we should also, as I said, adapting. You should be able to use your knowledge in any situation that you are put in. So yes, I have gone to places where they actually sit on the floor and teach the children on the floor. So in fact, they didn't even have a screen to project my presentation. So they brought a large TV screen from someone's home and then connected my computer to that. And we just had a table and they were all sitting on the floor and listening to me. But the thing is, if you go into the smaller communities, often teachers feel they are making a bigger impact on the students. In the city, some teachers feel that, oh, the students will learn anyway. They go to coaching classes, they have parents at home, etc. But in a rural setting, I think some of the teachers, at least, are very, very committed to making a difference in their community. So even though they may not have the full background of science education to graduation or post graduation, they're still teaching and making a success out of it. So, in fact, one of the teachers that I was training said, if only I had been taught like this, I would have reached NASA. So I said, okay, you have a chance to get your students, at least to ISRO, if not NASA. And what we want them to do is actually go to ISRO rather than NASA. So, uh, so we use local ingredients, so like indicators. There are lots of indicators around us, plants, the hibiscus flower, the rose, or the other flower that we call it shankapushpa, aparajita. Yeah, so the blue one now is made blue tea and that's become a fad, but that's actually just an indicator. How you find you can use these, and there are things in your home which are acids and bases that you know of, and then other things that the children can just check out. So we try to keep all the experiments. We say taking things from your what's available around you. You don't have.
Hmm.
So there are science is not only using these fancy apparatus and very well equipped labs. That's required if you're going to publish a paper on it. But to show children that science is around you, you should actually use things which are around you. So we just
Hmm.
see what's there with them, and then we set up little things like floating and sinking, something you can easily show them, density. There are so many things, surface tension, things that you can easily show without a lab. You just need a glass of water. So the one thing that I say is that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing well. So whenever I take up something, I give it my full. I want to see the success of it. I try to do my best to make a success of it. And the other thing, as I said, adaptability. So I feel there's nothing constant except change. So you have to learn to change and adapt because you can't be stuck in whichever place you are. I actually is so the only time actually I was very upset was when I didn't complete my PhD, and in some ways I blamed others. So there's no. I would just tell myself that accept whatever comes to you and try to make the most of it, because there are some things that are beyond your control. But what is in your control is how you adapt and manage what you get and do well with what you have.